All right, hello. My name is John Wood. Wanted to create an introduction of myself and this project. This project started from my experience in a master's degree. First I want to say this. If you'd like to know more about me, hear my playing, and things like that, my website is johnwoodguitarist.com. Most of the information I'm about to present is, which I'll explain more in depth in a second, but it's other people's information and opinions and things that I've gathered into one spot. And so, in the interest both of time and just the nature of the project, it's ultimately more other people's ideas than my own. I won't be sharing a lot of myself, and I also have that on my website as well. And so if you'd like to learn more about me and hear more about my playing, you can go to johnwoodguitarist.com. The other thing I would say is that there's a couple of videos that I think demonstrate, I'm going to say some of the efficacy of what I'm talking about from my perspective. By that I mean that you're going to be hearing the opinions of other guitarists like Kevin Lowe, Rene, and then also different method books that I've used as sources for this project. But I think I have to be able to show that I can do some of this in order to have some legitimacy. And so there's a video of me playing, just one night I decided to do an improvisation of Fly Me to the Moon in a couple different styles. And so I include that in this playlist. The opening arpeggio and rest stroke is, I'll say, pretty convincing. You can also go back to previous recordings if you really want to go down the rabbit hole and hear when I couldn't do that. So there's kind of a before and after. There's also a recording of me with my jazz group in Minneapolis, where some of the solos, there's these 16th notes passages that I improvised that I just couldn't play with that degree of speed or consistency or accuracy or control. So that's a little bit about me. Next thing I want to talk about is what this project is, and then why I want to do it and why I'm releasing it the way I'm doing it. So this project evolved out of my master's degree, and what I was basically trying to do is, well, what happened was I was reading a lot of different method books. So Aaron Shearer, Carl Lavaro, Pumping Nylon, and I started to notice that there was useful information in all of these, but there was some information that was in one book that was not in another. And it was also very spread out within that book. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. I think one, the act of learning music is somewhat intuitive and personal. So sometimes there's multiple solutions for the same problem. And also it's intuitive. And so some people are doing things that they don't really know how to explain, but they've figured out how to do it. Which doesn't mean to say that they're not self-aware, they're not conscious, but they lack the vocabulary to really articulate it clearly, which is one of the things I'm hoping to contribute to this conversation. The other thing, too, is that I think a lot of prior methods have been... so take Aaron Shearer as an example. It's not so much there's anything wrong with Aaron Shearer, is that Aaron Shearer's method is kind of building a guitarist up from relatively zero to, competency, for lack of a better word. And so one of the issues is that there might be a chapter that, let's say you're a guitarist like I was in my master's degree, where I could sight read, I could keep time, I had some experience playing, I'd done some recitals, I had some general musicianship. I didn't need that Aaron Shearer thing where you have an exercise in chapter 1 that's Mary Had a Little Lamb, and then chapter 7 is doing rest stroke and a duet with your teacher and things like that. I didn't need to be built up incrementally. What I needed was kind of an encyclopedia of guitar technique and how to execute it, which is one way of describing what I'm trying to do. Maybe another way of putting it is that, if Aaron Shearer is kind of building a student up from 0 to 50, and Pumping Nylon is more of that, like, we're going to just focus on the techniques and the movements. What I'm trying to do is maybe create something akin more to Pumping Nylon, but based on some of the research from all these different books, and even more so from the teachings of Rene Izquierdo here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So what I'm going to release now is the conversations that Rene and I and Kevin Lowe have had in the course of me trying to put this book together. I'm going to talk a little bit more why I did that and different things like that in another video. But basically, this book is going to be about the right hand, the left hand, the body, and then the brain, which by that I mean, like, how do you work up a piece? How do you practice? And a lot of that physical stuff, that technical stuff, is coming from Rene and then some other sources. And so I'm going to release the video on that stuff now. Some of the practicing stuff was more research-based by pulling information. Basically, I went through all these different method books. Like, there's a great chapter in Puvol where he walks you through how to practice. Ricardo Iznaola also wrote a good book on practicing. And again, you have the same thing with technique, where you have, some books have one thing where some books don't have another, or somebody says something in a different way that I also found helpful, or whatever. And so that material I'm going to be releasing on my blog serially, because if I try to do it all at once, it would just be too much work. So I think that concludes the portion of what this book is about in a nutshell. So to kind of recap, the body and how to set that up, left and right hand, and then the brain and practicing. And then there'll kind of be this category of, I guess, everything else. And one example would be like all the different things that go into having a guitar built, all the different factors. Because I had a guitar built while I was studying with Rene, and there's a lot that goes into it. And I think it's worthwhile to lay that all down in writing and in video, so that people don't have to learn it the hard way, the way I did, or Rene doesn't have to teach it again to another student like me. Also, too, some of this relates to the other subjects, because, for example, you can have different thicknesses of neck, meaning, from the back of the neck. If this is the neck, you can have different thicknesses in between the front and the back. You can also have different spacing of the strings, so that you don't have to, or the frets, so that you don't have to spread your fingers as much. And so it also relates to this other content, because if we're thinking, how do you execute technique well, if you have small, short fingers, you probably want to consider a guitar with shorter spaced frets, so that you don't have to spread as much. Whereas if you have a very large hand with long fingers, you might want more space. Also, the space of the neck. So I'm actually going to grab my guitar here. So, we talked about the thickness of the neck from the back to the front. There's also like the thickness of it this way. You can also adjust the nut and have different spacings of the strings to compensate for different preferences and different size hands and different things. So the last section of this book is going to kind of cover roughly everything else, with the caveat that the big thing is going to be having a guitar built and the different factors that go into that. I think that's everything for this video. The next video is going to be about how I'm releasing this and why I'm releasing it, and why I'm releasing it the way I'm releasing it. So thank you for your time.